Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be explaining in detail how I built this realistic forest environment in ROBLOX Studio. We're going to go straight into it and diving into how lighting, composition, and free assets can transform a flat base plate into a high-end cinematic experience. I forgot to record myself starting this build, but don't mind that. Now, the secret to realistic builds isn't perfection, it's imperfection. Now, I'm not saying that in the way that any build that's imperfect will look good. It's just about paying attention to your surroundings. Always use references. Some people think using references makes you a lesser builder, but it's the complete opposite. Using reference images makes you an even better builder. I know a lot of you probably had this great idea of a build, but when you got into Studio, you just didn't know where to start, or even how to. But having references helps guide you. Restarting a build or deleting a good part of your build when you dislike it is actually a great thing because you have a good sense of awareness. And restarting always makes things turn out way better than what it was going to be before. Now, you can see me deleting, changing, and getting rid of assets that I don't like. And yes, I do this all the time in building. It's quite the normality of building. For terrain, you shouldn't overcomplicate it. Now, for me personally, I like using a mix of terrain editor and mesh terrain, just because I really hate Roblox's terrain editor. And no, it does not cause more lag. And in fact, terrain editor causes more lag rather than using mesh terrain. It's one of the biggest misinformation in Roblox building, so when someone tells you using mesh terrain is just going to lag your game like crazy, it's not true. Generally, starting your build is the hard part. But once you start, you just enter a flow state where your mind's creativity is endless. Take your time into starting it because it will be worth it in the end. As you can see, I've gotten a big set of assets all organized into one studio. I'm going to show you how you can turn some random assets from Sketchfab and Toolbox into something great in the end. And please don't fall for the misinformation that using free assets from Toolbox and other websites makes you a horrible builder. As long as you're not claiming it's all made by you, it's fine to use assets provided by other developers to assist you. And I'm going to show you that you don't need to be a professional modeler to make great maps. Seriously, once you stop relying on the default assets and materials Roblox gives by default, and start playing around with your own PBR materials, your builds are going to look like a completely different engine, and people will question if it even is Roblox. I'll link down some websites where you can get those textures and materials. And if you want a video just about materials and textures, let me know. Now, notice how I've tucked ferns and smaller rocks into the crevices of the larger boulders. This blending hides the harsh seams where the assets meet the mesh terrain. You can do this for anything, just to cover up things that aren't visually appealing or to add extra detail. For the environmental assets, you need to always group them in threes of varying sizes, small, medium, large, to mimic natural growth patterns that happen in forests. For lighting, I'll explain some basic things. Your ambient is your shadows. So typically it's always a dark shade of a certain color. And to change the color of your light part, you can change color shift top. Top modifies light-colored surfaces, whereas bottom changes the hue of darker, shadowed areas. Now for those two combinations, always stick the color theory, which for this instance is yellow and dark blue. Using that creates mood, depth, and harmony in your builds. Building is quite similar to art when it comes to lighting, color palettes, and assets. Another big tip, when designing a map, you have to guide the player's eye. What this means is using assets or lighting to guide the player to where you want it to look. For example, the fallen logs. It guides the player to the right side of the map. Because that's the pathway I've created in the map, the forest goes deeper, which is why I would want them to go into the right side specifically. My last tip for you guys is that realism in Roblox isn't about high poly counts, it's about how you play with light and shadow. If you found this tutorial helpful, drop a comment on what build you want to see next. Thank you for watching, and if you made it this far, just sit back, go build something, and enjoy the rest of the video.